Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for Picket Fence Studios August release. This release is all about Halloween and Christmas. You are absolutely going to love it. Today I have a project using the Cat Plays Fiddle to the Silver Moon. This is the absolute perfect stamp set to create little vignettes for these treat bags. These cute bags are super easy to make for those special trick-or-treaters in your life. 3 graphic images and a number of sentiments are included in this spooky and fun stamp set. I'm making 6 treat bags for this project, so I stamped each of the images twice on Neenah Classic Crest 110-pound cardstock using Picket Fence Studios Black Hybrid ink. This ink is good for any medium, so it'll be perfect when I Copic color on it. I want my images really black, so I'm stamping them a couple of times and using a pressure tool. This set has a coordinating die set, so after I'm finished all of my stamping, I die cut the images. I'm using little white bags that measure 3.5 inches by 6 3/4 inches. Post-it note tape is used to mask off a rectangle for ink blending. The bottom of the bag is masked off a little bit higher. There is a little horizontal bump that was caused by the bottom of the bag folding flat. So this actually worked out perfectly because it gave me room to stamp a sentiment. Just have to love it when there's a happy accident. I will use each of my 3 color combinations for 2 of the bags. Distress Oxide inks are being applied with Picket Fence Studios life-changing blender brushes. Inking these bags is just a little bit different than working on cardstock. The paper used to make these bags is just a little bit slicker and the ink just seems to sit on top a little bit more, if that makes sense. This really had no bearing on the actual ink blend. It just felt a little bit different working with it. To get that spooky vibe, I start off by ink blending at the bottom of the rectangle for all of the bags using black soot followed by hickory smoke. For the pair of bags that I'm working on now, I'll be finishing off the blend with Mowed Lawn. When I ink blend with blender brushes, I like to hold it by the head. It gives you more control over the amount of pressure that you're using, resulting in a more consistent blend. And off comes the Post-it note tape. I just love those crisp lines. For the next pair of bags, the 3rd color that I'm using is Barn Door. And before I remove the Post-it note tape, I'm going to take an A2 stencil Cauldron of Bats and apply black soot to it. Didn't bother taping the stencil down. I held on firmly at the bottom with one hand. The ink was applied 1 bat at a time, so I didn't need to worry about that blender brush moving up and down over the stencil and possibly moving it. I apply the ink several times to each one to make sure that I have a nice dark image. For the last pair of bags, I'm using Wilted Violet along with the hickory smoke and the black soot. For these backgrounds, I'll be stenciling this spooky tree from another new stencil called Welcome to the Graveyard A2 Blending Stencil. I think it looks so awesome. I set the bags aside until the ink was completely dry. Then I chose a sentiment for each pair of cards and stamped it at the bottom of the bag with Picket Fence Studios Black Hybrid ink. Next, I added some color to all of my images with some Copic markers. Coloring was kept pretty simple, using maybe 4 to 5 markers for each one, with the exception of the cat. For the cat, I only needed 3 markers. For each pair of images, I picked the main color from the background and applied it to the image to make it more cohesive. And where's the green for the cat? Well, it's the eyes. If you're interested in the colors that I've used, they'll be listed on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. And now to put these bags together. Before I pop the cat on the bag, I'm going to add in some white pigment ink to give the impression that there are ghosts dancing in the background. I don't typically wash my blender brushes, but I did before I did this technique. As the white ink dries, it does fade, so I apply it several times. This is super easy. I just take the head of the blender brush, press it against the panel, and as I pull the brush down towards the bottom of the ghost, I'm lessening my pressure. I use a little bit of liquid adhesive and adhere the cats to the bags. And then I dot in some black ink for the ghost size. Most of the bags have some detail stenciled onto the background, so I just go ahead and adhere the images to the bags. The Happy Halloween word die is the perfect size to create a handle for these bags. On strips of Bristol Smooth cardstock, I apply the main color that was used in each of the backgrounds and then go over it with a little bit of hickory smoke just to give it a duskier feel. The strips of cardstock were trimmed down to 1-inch widths so that I would have 6 handles. Low tack purple tape holds the Happy Halloween word die in place. After I run it through the die cutting machine, I make sure that I retain those die cuts for the letters that have those inside pieces. They are adhered to black cardstock that measures the same size as the strips. For those letters that require that inside die cut, I pop a little bit of glue on the letter where the die cut is going to be adhered. I use my craft pick to hold the center of the letter in place and then pop the letter out. I decided that I needed a stronger adhesive to attach the handles to the bags, so I'm using Sue Kwang's double-sided tape. I think the tape that I'm using is a 1/4 inch wide, so I'm actually adding a couple of pieces to either end. And after the backing paper is removed, I'm going to attach the end with the happy on it to the front of the bag and center it. Make sure nothing's askew. When I attach the other side, I push the bag together and then line it up with the other side that has been attached. And then I press firmly on each side to make sure that it is well adhered. And that completes these fun treat bags featuring Picket Fence Studios' Cat Plays Fiddle to the Silver Moon. And of course, this was the perfect opportunity to incorporate some other newly released Halloween products. That includes 2 new stencils, Cauldron of Bats and Welcome to the Graveyard, and the fabulous Happy Halloween word die. This is a big release with lots of great products. You can check them out at pfstamps.com. Thank you for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your visit.